As he does every Friday, presented by EMJ Marketing. Jim Barker joins us from the CFL on TSN. And Jim, before we jump into the games this weekend, would you mind taking a swing at that question of, are we in a quarterback crisis in the CFL, that we don't have the top guns, or we got to start over sometime? How are you on that?
I don't know if it's a crisis. I think the NFL is going through a lot of the same thing, kind of a changing of the guard. And I think you have new people stepping in to take over these jobs, but it's kind of an ongoing process. But I think you're seeing it also in the NFL. You're getting some very average quarterback play in a lot of places, and obviously that limits the quality of the games. But it's a question that's going to continue to be asked. I think it's one of the not problems for us. I actually think we have a better chance once a guy isn't an NFL guy. We have a better chance than the XFL or the USFL, because I think players look at this as a career move, as I can go up there and live a great life and really play in a special league, where the XFL and the USFL is changing players every year, and they're sending some players to the NFL, but one or two make it every year and the rest don't. But so I think that bodes well for us with some of the good quarterbacks.
Correct me if I'm wrong. You're an offensive guy first, not defense first. Am I right on that? Okay.
Correct.
So how long, ideally, if you could bring in, like back in the day when the Stampeders had Jeff Garcia, Dave Dickinson, Henry Burris, and the BC Lions had Dickinson, Buck Pierce, and whatever, three studs. How long would it take, ideally, to groom a guy before his first start? A raw American rookie quarterback.
Well, it takes, I believe, 1 full year of watching. When we had Ricky Ray, Jarius Jackson, and then Caleros and Trevor Harris, we had 4. But basically, Jarius and Ricky were in a different class from where we put Zach and Trevor as the developmental guys. They then had that full year to not have to play at all. They would, one would be on the roster each week, and the other would be on the PR, and they would go back and forth for the first year. And then the second year, they jockeyed between being 2 and 3. That was a perfect scenario. I think it does take 1 year at least of watching, learning, not having the pressure of being the guy. To be honest, I think it's rare what Chad Kelly's doing. I think it's rare what Nathan Rourke did, where in their first real year as a starter, that they're able to have the kind of success they're having. Like, Jake Mayer is going through some downs, and whether he can overcome those and become the great player that I'm sure that the Stampeders believe he can be, that's still yet to be seen. So like I say, I think Nathan Rourke and Chad Kelly have both been anomalies in that they both sat for a full year, watched, learned, and then got their opportunity and made the most of it. Played at an MOP type level. So that's a bit of a rarity. Like I say, what Jake Mayer's going through, very good example, because kind of like Dane Evans. Dane Evans' first year as a starter, as being the only guy, the pressure got to him, whatever. He wasn't the same. And he'll work his way back, and maybe he'll never be a starter again. I believe he will. And hopefully we'll have learned from that, and we'll be better the second time around as just the guy. When you look around your shoulder, there's nobody else. If it's not you, it's nobody. And that kind of pressure is a lot different than being the guy who goes in for a guy who's injured and things like that. So, I think it's 2 years, and the third year, a guy can become great. Like I say, we've been fortunate the last 2 years to have guys like Nathan Rourke and Chad Kelly that I think are a bit of an anomaly.
Yeah. Cortez, by the way, close friend of mine, says year 3 ideally for him. But I'm like, We're not in an ideal world, George. Of course, I get that you'd like to wait. It doesn't work that way, and he knows that. You've mentioned Chad Kelly. Everybody's mentioning Chad Kelly. You kind of intimated before the season you thought this guy was special. He hasn't disappointed. If you were the GM of the Argos, would you have given him this contract midseason, an extension, and made him the highest paid at this time?
Absolutely. I think he's a key to what everything they're trying to do here, and he's just proven himself in terms of his maturity level. All the things that were question marks about him, he's shown that stuff's not the case. His athletic ability, when he was drafted, shoot, some of the McShay and some of those guys said this guy's a first round, second round talent that just has a seventh round mind and just doesn't have the maturity level. Well, all those maturity questions he's answered here in Toronto. And like I say, he's playing at a very high level. He's playing like a youngster who's having fun. He's been an outstanding leader. I think for them to be able to sign him for what they did was fantastic for the league, for the organization. Obviously, it's great. I think it's great for Chad. I think this is a great spot for him in Toronto. It's a difficult market. I think people look at Chad Kelly a little different than they look at a lot of other players who might come in. I think they look at him as an NFL guy playing in the CFL rather than a guy aspiring to go to the NFL. They understand. I think he's looked at as a guy who could have been in the NFL if it wasn't for some of the stupid things he did, but he's here. And you know what? He's adapted and he's grown to love it, and he's become a part of the society, and everybody deserves a second chance, and that he's taken his second chance and made the most of it. So I think that sells well in Toronto. So he's in a place he loves being here. He's becoming a part of the community. He's getting involved in charity work. He's doing things off the field. He's everything you want in your starting quarterback. He lives Toronto year round. So you know, I think it's just a great thing for the league. I'd like to see us keep guys like Chad. You know, Nathan Rourke, it hasn't worked out, and I think he's gonna catch on in the NFL. But
as best you can you explain the politics that went down with Nathan Rourke in this past week? Doug Pedersen said there was never a competition for QB2. Nathan's saying he tells Dunk that he would never have gone to Jacksonville if he didn't have a chance to compete for QB2. So there's a disconnect there, and he ends up being waived and signing on the practice roster. I'm sure you know the ins and outs of it. I don't. Our viewers don't. Can you explain what you think what happened there?
Well, yeah, I can't say what happened. I don't know whether Doug Pedersen says you can compete to be number two. The bottom line is when they signed C.J. Beathard and gave him the $8 million or whatever they gave him to be Trevor Lawrence's backup, they were committing to him being the backup. He's Trevor Lawrence's best friend off the field. The job of the backup quarterback in the NFL starting quarterbacks are a rarity. I mean, there's 32 of them, and there's not 32 that are good enough, is the way I look at it. So I think that having the number one thing the backup quarterback has to do is support that guy and make sure that guy is the best version of himself, that he can make that team better. A guy like Nathan Rourke is perfect. And when you look at the contract, as you think about it, the guarantee he got was a practice roster guarantee. The $200,000 was a practice roster guarantee. So, he signed for $5,000 and then got this guarantee of the practice roster. So, and it's not necessarily a bad thing for Nathan. I thought they would keep him as the 3 because I thought somebody like Arizona, who's starting Josh Dobbs this week, would go and sign a guy who played as well as he played. 5 scores in 7 drives or 8 drives, something astronomical. And he just looked at home. He looked like a guy who could play. If I'm Arizona, I'm bringing that guy in. I'm going to say, you know what? We'll start back at square zero and see what happens, with Kyler Murray. But, again, it's to me that's what I would have done. But those NFL guys they're wired differently. Their jobs are obviously scrutinized, and taking that kind of a risk, it can get you fired. So I think what happened was they saw CJ as the best to make Trevor Lawrence better. And Nathan Rourke is there. And let me tell you something. If Trevor Lawrence goes down for the year, I don't think it'll take 3 weeks before Nathan Rourke's a starter.
We don't have time to go through all the weekend games in Labor Day Classic, but I will ask you this. BC's favored by 4 points at Montreal. Winnipeg by 7.5 at Sask. Argos favored by 8 at Hamilton. And Calgary favored by 5 at home against Edmonton. Is there an update of an upset of the 4 games that you could see happening this week?
Well, I think that again, I like Montreal at home against BC. I think BC's they're in that struggling stage right now, and if they can't run the ball, which they've shown they can't, and they have trouble stopping the run, I think Montreal has a real chance there. The game I love is the Saskatchewan game. Can they win this? I don't know. I mean, they've got so many weapons on offense, but Saskatchewan, there's just something about that defense that they will give them trouble, and the crowd I know they haven't played great there this year, but that's an interesting game to me. I think that Toronto's going to have more trouble with Hamilton than they think. For Hamilton to go into BC and do what they did, now they've the whole quarterback situation. He played well, didn't turn the ball over. I think they're going to have more trouble than they maybe are anticipating with the Tiger Cats. And then that last game, the Edmonton-Calgary game, again, I'm going to pick Calgary. But Edmonton, if Trey Ford continues to do what he's doing, which is not make any mistakes, he is as dangerous in the open field as any quarterback has been in this league. I mean, he reminds me, I had Tracy Ham early in my career here, and that's who he's very reminiscent of Tracy. He throws the ball. He's got a strong arm, which Tracy had. Not as accurate sometimes as you'd like, but he's so lightning quick in the open field. So he can become very dangerous for teams. Defensive coordinators aren't going to want to play against him. They're going to have to rush him conservatively. I'm going to pick Calgary because I think for Calgary, this is a huge game. And I'm not totally not sold on Jake Mayer. He's got to come through in a game like this. This is a huge game in Calgary, as you know.
Oh, Edmonton wins, and they're ahead of Calgary in the standings. So what a league. Jim, wonderful analysis. We'll be watching all weekend. Thanks for the time.
All right. Thank you, Rod.
The CFL on TSN's Jim Barker joining us, and his appearances are proudly presented by our friends at EMJ Marketing. EMJ Marketing will provide the right keynote speaker for your event. Contact Joe at emjmarketing.com today.